本日は皆さんお集まりいただきましてありがとうございます。ライオットゲームズが開発中のプロジェクト L について、プロデューサー陣のお二人にその開発について、その開発の哲学についてお話を伺うという時間となっております。まずは皆さんご存知お待ちかねキャノン兄弟をご紹介します。I'd like to introduce the Cannon brothers. Tony and Tom、トニーとトムの2人がエボの創設者でありまして、エボの生みの親のお二人ということなんですけれども、現在はライオットゲームズに所属しております。そしてインタビュアーはハメコさんです。ご自身もプレイヤーであり実況解説 MC としても多方面で活躍されているハメコさんです。
はい、ご紹介に預かりましたハメコです。今日はですねこのキャノン兄弟のお二人にですね格闘ゲーム哲学についていろいろ伺っていきたいと思います。まずですねお二人がですねこのエボジャパン、そしてエボリューションの創設者でありまして、そしてリーグオブレジェンドの格闘ゲーム、待望の格闘ゲームですよね、プロジェクト L の開発に携わっているということはですねここに詰めかけている多くの方が知っていることではあると思うんですけれども、このお二人がどんなことをしてきたのか、パーソナルな情報について、そんなに詳しく知っている方っていうのは多くないと思います。ここでですね格闘ゲームに関わっていくそのルーツですとか、バックグラウンド、そこについてまず改めて聞いていきたいと思います。
So many people know that you two are the founders of Evolution EVO and now executive producer and technical lead of Project L, but not many people probably know about your background and how you were brought up. So today we like to know about your roots and background, how you became to enter the game industry and how you became to enter the fighting games. So could you please tell us about your background in general?
Yeah, absolutely. First, thank you for having us. We're both very excited to be here in Japan. I have been playing and been around fighting games for my entire adult life. I remember I first played Street Fighter 2 back in 1991, and I was just amazed by the graphics and the idea of playing a game as competition. So I played Street Fighter as esports wasn't a thing back then, but I played competitively, going to tournaments in Chicago and New York. I tried to make it out to Japan for some of the tournaments here, but I wasn't good enough, but I tried. And so after having played a lot and really enjoying tournaments, Tony and I, that's when we decided we would try to make our own tournament. And that's where EVO comes from. And so we started EVO in 2002. And it was a small tournament then. We had, I think, 64 players the first time. And we've just stayed at it year after year after year, and it's grown to what it is today. Around 2012, we decided that the next step for trying to make fighting games better and contribute to the fighting game community was to try to make our own fighting game. Now, we had never made a game before, and so that was very challenging. We started making our first fighting game for PC, which was called Rising Thunder, and that was made very quickly with a small team in about 18 months. And from that game, we started talking to Riot Games. We learned a lot about making games, and we thought that if we teamed up with Riot, we could try again and make something that could really be something that we hope is special. And so several years later, right, now we're working on Project L.
ありがとうございます。そしてじゃあ聞きましょうか。はい、さらに。
Unsurprisingly, our backgrounds are very similar. We both played in arcades in the 90s.
ちょっと今冗談なんですけれども、驚くほど背景バックグラウンドが似てるねっていうような、双子なんでね当然なので今ちょっとしたジョークを挟んでくださいました。Go ahead.
After college, we both went into the tech industry, and that gave us the opportunity to play both in California, in Chicago, as Tom mentioned, in the Pacific Northwest. And what we found is that the passion for fighting games was the same everywhere we went. And in 2000, I had the opportunity to come to Japan to play the players here in an exhibition between US players and Japanese players. And this is before the internet really took off, and so it was a complete unknown to us as to whether US players or Japanese players were better. And we were just blown away figuratively and literally at how great the players were here. And that's what really inspired us. We had already started to make EVO a large national tournament, but to make it international and really invite players from all over the world to come. And a contingent of Japanese players came in the early 2000s. People like Tokido and MOV and eventually Daigo, and it really helped breed sort of this international celebration of fighting games.
ありがとうございます。じゃあちょっと少し脱線するんですけど、お二人は双子ということで、対戦格闘ゲームといえば対戦ですよね。このお二人が一緒に対戦したいと思うんですけど、どっちが強いですか？
So this is a kind of we're gonna ask us very funny question. So because it's a fighting game, have you ever battled against each other? And the question is, which is stronger? Who is stronger?
I want Tony to answer this question. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. Actually, the first tournament we ever played in was in 1991 in New Mexico, and we met each other in the finals. Yeah, and Tom won that tournament. He was playing Dalsim, and I was playing Guile in the original Street Fighter 2. And that has been the case for the rest of our competitive career. Tom has always been a little bit better.
補足しておくと、ストリートファイター2、ダルシム対ガエル、大体ダルシム勝つんで、キャラが強いですね。No, no. Your skill is good.
キャラクターの問題でなくてスキルが良かったから優勝したというふうに言っております。
はい、ありがとうございます。先ほどね、お話の中で、いろんな大会に出る中で自分たちもやりたいということで、エボを2002年に始めていった。そして、そのルーツには、2000年にあった日米カプコンゲーム日米決戦という大会がありまして、自分も実は見に行ったんですけど、その存在が非常に大きかったという話を、されましたよね。なんでしょう、どんな大会をモチーフにしたとか、どこから影響を受けたのかってもう少し詳しく聞けますかね。
So you mentioned how that you had that experience in the 1991 tournament and also the 2000 tournament, the Capcom US versus Japan. Actually, he was there to see it, and so I'm sure a lot of tournaments inspired you to making EVO. But could you be more specific? Do you have any specific tournament or games that you had in mind when you were trying to make EVO, or do you have a specific person that inspired you? Could you be more specific about what kind of gave you ideas for EVO?
One of the very first EVOs we did, I think it was EVO 2004. I hope I get this right. Third Strike, Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, where the U.S. players were very excited about that game, very passionate about that game, and we had a 5-on-5 competition between the United States players, the very best in the U.S., and some players in Japan who decided to come. Tokido was one of them. It did not go well for the United States. We got destroyed. And so when we saw how far we could come to get better, and we saw like the very, very best play, the international competition and how exciting that was the inspiration for us to try to make EVO as big as it could. And then, of course, at the same event, we had the famous EVO Moment 37, right? And it's hard to underestimate, before the internet, we didn't know that the parrying the entire super was possible. And so to see something that you didn't even think was possible, it expanded what we thought was possible in the game. And I think that's the number one inspiration.
それらを生かして広げていったということなんですね。トニーさんも何かあればなんですけど。
Tony, did you want to add on to anything?
Oh, yeah. I think even before EVO, we were running tournaments in the late 90s. And we did it because there was such passion behind the game of players who wanted to come together and see who was the best, right? And really just play together. Fighting games are very competitive, but they're games that create friendships and lifelong friendships. And we wanted to create an event where anybody who loved the game could come and play and come and compete. That's been very important to us, which is why we still use an open format. So if you come and you're new to the game and you might get in a pool with Daigo, yeah, you can play Daigo and you have a chance. You probably won't win, but it rewards your investment in the game and you're part of the community, whether you're the best player in the world or someone who's new to fighting games. That's been very important for us.
ありがとうございます。それはちょっと話題を変えていきたいと思います。お二人と格闘ゲームの関わりの中で非常に重要なこととしてロールバックネットコード GGPO の開発が挙げられると思います。 2019年にはもうこの、ね、GGPO オープンソース化されて、現状今ではですねメーカー独自のそういったロールバックネットコードも徐々に増えているというところがありますが、そもそもこの GGPO っていうのは一体どういう経緯でこの開発に着手したのかというところを改めて聞かせてください。
So moving on to the next topic, we'd like to discuss GGPO. You being involved in fighting games, this GGPO is something that we cannot miss out on in the conversation, and it was became open sourced in 2019, and now other manufacturers are making their own rollback netcodes by their unique ways. So to begin with, how did you start developing these netcodes? How did it come to be?
It was, wow. When the original Xbox came out, Capcom released Hyper Fighter, which was a game that I played in arcades. But I was very busy with work, and I didn't have time to go to arcades anymore, so I tried playing it online. And it used an input delay system, which doesn't feel good to a player. I was disappointed. And so in my spare time, I started looking at ways to improve netcode. And it really boiled down to I have a computer science degree, I work in a tech company, I understand networking, but I'm also a player, so I understand what feels good and what's necessary to make it feel good. And then just through experimenting with different techniques, I came up with rollback. And then some friends and I got together and just tried it. First we played, within California, and then we played California to Virginia, and then we played California to Australia, and it held up. And that's when we knew we had something, right? That was a pretty exciting moment.
そういったところでお二人はそのイベント、エボリューション、そしてソフトウェア GGPO 2つの面で、この格闘ゲームの歴史に非常に大きく貢献しているというふうに個人的にも思っています。これらのその成功についてお二人はどのように捉えてますか？どういうふうに思ってますか？
So we spoke about EVO and we spoke about GGPO. So in that sense, both of you has contributed to fighting games, both through event and through software, and succeeded. And so, what do you think about the success that you have achieved through these two media?
It's a little bit humbling. This is beyond what we dreamed of for EVO. And Tony made GGPO not to try to make $1 million, but to try to make fighting games better, which is why he open sourced it. And to see that kind of technology being adopted by so many fighting games, it's what we hope for. But we are always driven by what's next. What's the next thing we can do to try to make fighting games better?
ありがとうございます。非常に興味深いお話でした。でここからはプロジェクト L こちらの話についても聞かせていただきたいと思います。このねお二人はやっぱりその格闘ゲーム非常に長い昔からプレイしているというところで、開発を進めてくる上で過去にプレイした格闘ゲームの経験がどういうふうに役立った、と考えていますか？
So I'd like to move on to a topic that everybody here is waiting for, Project L. So we obviously understand that your experience in the fighting games in the past has helped you in developing Project L. Could you be more specific how your experience from the past helped you in developing this new project?
I think Tony's story about GGPO is a good example. Because we are players and because we have been involved with building experiences for fighting game players for so long, we have a lot of practice in understanding hopefully what will make players happy. And so at EVO Japan and all EVOs, we have this top 8 format, right? Which we think is an exciting way to conclude a tournament. And so based on all the things that we've learned through all of these, we can take those learnings and try to put them into software, into a video game, which is different. But for instance, when we're thinking about our rank system, we're thinking about what does it feel like to go through pools and then to have that celebration of I made it out of pools, but now can I make it to the finals? And then can I win? And we understand the emotional journey that the player goes on, and we can try to come up with ideas in the game that give you hopefully the same feeling.
ありがとうございます。そこの流れで言うとやはりプロジェクト L がすごく話題になったところとして、本来の意味でのフリートゥープレイ基本プレイ無料の格闘ゲームとして、今後発表されているというところにあるのかなと思います。 ここでいうフリートゥープレイっていうのは、ゲームとして完全版であるものをいつも無料でプレイできるということですね。これ格闘ゲーム実はちゃんと達成できているタイトルってほとんどなかったので、今回プロジェクト L 最初からそれを標榜しているタイトルになるわけですけども、これ一体そのプリートゥープレイにしたかったっていう理由と、そしてやっぱりどういったマネタイズを考えているのかっていうところも気になっているところです。その2つについて伺っていて、いただけますか。
So I think what you just said really comes to the fact that you are trying to make this free to play, and you're thinking about the players and for the business industry itself. But I think he's saying that he thinks that the only titles, most titles have not succeeded in making their games actually free to play. So could you tell us about why you want to make it free to play, and also how you're trying to monetize this Project L?
Yeah, one of the things we're trying to do with Project L is let more players find the magic of fighting games. And right now there are many barriers. One of the things that can help there is making it free to play, where they can experience the breadth of fighting games. One of the things that we're very serious about is making sure that they get a genuine experience, and so we will never try to sell power, right? So they should be able to have a full-strength character or explore the roster without having to pay. And that will lead to more engagement. And then when they spend money because they love the game, they'll feel good about it. They'll feel good about it before the purchase and then after the purchase. As far as models, like Riot has other titles in the free-to-play space, like League of Legends and Valorant, that are very successful. So we're going to borrow ideas from those games and make sure that they make sense in the fighting game genre. For example, both of those games will sell cosmetics as opposed to power. So maybe that's an approach we'll take.
なるほど、ありがとうございます。そしてお二人は先ほどもね、序盤に話題が出たんですけども、ライジングサンダー、という F2P、これも F2P だったんですね。格闘ゲームに、関わっておりました。でこの開発経験がですね、プロジェクト L にどういうふうに生かされているのかというところにちょっと伺っていきたいです。で中でもこのライジングサンダーはかなりこの格闘ゲームのでも早い段階でクールダウンの必殺技を使うと一定時間使えなくなる代わりにワンボタンで出せるクールダウンシステムっていうのを、搭載した格闘ゲームになっていまして、それがねすごく個人的にはリーグオブレジェンドのシステムとすごく近いなと思ったんですね。なのでそのあたりについてちょっと伺ってもらってもよろしいでしょうか。
So we understand that you in the first half of the interview you said that you were involved in developing Rising Thunder, and this development experience of Rising Thunder probably gave you ideas for doing Project L. And for example, the cooldown system, which probably was from League of Legends. This game was one of the first games to introduce cooldown system. So like that, could you tell us about how your experience with developing Rising Thunder is helping you in developing Project L?
So let me talk about our approach to fighting games, and just our approach to everything we do. There are so many great fighting games being made today, and we can see many of them here and even the upcoming ones. They're so impressive. If we're going to do something, we feel like we need to try something new. Like we will experiment to see if we can find new things that can make fighting games better. Like with EVO, the open bracket format was an experiment and it worked out. Cooldowns in Rising Thunder was one of those experiments, but it didn't work out. We weren't really happy with that, and we think taking options away from the player, like you hit a button and then you can't hit that button again for 5 seconds or something, that was not a good idea. But there was a reason why we thought that was interesting. It was to try to balance simplified inputs. Okay, and so we've taken those learnings and we're applying those to Project L. And so we think with Project L, and this is we've even learned more developing Project L. And when we finally get this game to players, you will teach us so much more about this game immediately, right? And so the way that we think about this project and all of our projects is, can we constantly be learning and making things better, and and try new things, not be afraid to try new things, but if they don't work out, listen to players and change.
ありがとうございます。そこに関連する話だと思うんですけども、リーグオブレジェンド、元となる、ね、リーグオブレジェンドといえば2週間に1回アップデートされるっていうところでもすごく特徴的なタイトルになっていますが、格闘ゲームに関して言うと一般的にはあんまり頻度の高いアップデートっていうのは求められていない、好まれていないというそんな印象があります。プロジェクト L っていうのはこのバランス調整についてどういうアプローチを取るっていう予定なんでしょうか。
So in relevance to what you just said, League of Legends, they has been doing updates every 2 weeks, and for fighting games, those updates, a lot of updates are not so favored among the players, to my understanding. So Project L, how are you gonna keep the balance? How are you gonna make adjustments? What are your thoughts right now?
We take inspiration from League of Legends, but for everything we do, we will do what's right for a fighting game. And so what we like about League is we think constantly keeping the game updated makes sure that the game doesn't stay in a bad state for too long. But part of the fun of fighting games is seeing an overpowered technique and then the players try to figure it out. And maybe they can counter it, right? And then can you have a counter for the counter? And if you patch the game too quickly, that's not possible. So we won't patch every 2 weeks. It's pretty safe to say that. We're going to find the right time between patches that works really well for a fighting game. And this is an area where once we are live one day, we're really going to listen to players. And if you tell us we're patching too quickly or too slowly, we'll try something else until we get it right.
ありがとうございます。そこら辺は、その臨機応変に、それは1個前の質問の回答にすごく寄り添っていると思っていて、その皆さんからのこの聞いた声をちゃんと反映していいものにしていくっていう多分そこだと思うんですけど、はい、ありがとうございます。でこれが多分最後の質問になりますかね。現在このプロジェクト L には5人のチャンピオンがもう発表されております。ジンとアーリとエコーとダリウス、イラオイの5キャラですね。で、プロトタイプではカタリナの姿もあったわけなんですが、この採用するチャンピオンを決めるとき、一体どんな要素を重要視しているのかなというところについて最後に伺わせてください。
So this probably will be the last question for this session. Currently in Project L, 5 champions, Jinx, Ari, Echo, Darius, and Eloy are announced. And in the prototype, Catalina was also there. And so when you decide on the champions, what elements do you place emphasis on? What elements do you think are important when bringing in champions to the games?
I think one of our strengths on Project L is how many different kinds of people we have that are passionate about the game. We have old fighting game players, we have new fighting game players, we have people who are new to fighting games, and we have people who maybe come from the League side, the League IP, right? And so when we're building a new champion, there are obviously fighting game concerns you want to consider, like what is their archetype? Is this a grappler or a zoner, right? What is their style? Like, how can a player express themselves differently within that genre, right? We're also trying to look at the source material, the League IP, and really try to elevate it and say, for a character like Darius, what does Darius represent in League? And what's the best expression of that in a fighting game, right? They're very different games. League is very helicopter view, top down, and fighting game is much, much closer inside view. And so how do you make sure that that power fantasy, that essence of the champion is true to a fighting game, but also true to the League IP. And I think one of our strengths as a team is we have so many different perspectives on how to accomplish all of those things. And we'll iterate on a champion continuously until we feel really great about it.
はい、ということで、以上となりますが、結構プロジェクト L 云々というよりもやっぱりこのキャノン兄弟お二人がどういうふうに格闘ゲームに携わってきたかっていうのと、これからどういうふうに携わっていきたいかみたいな話がかなり聞けたのがすごいいい機会だったなと思います。皆さんもいかがだったでしょうか。
それでは we'd like to have a word from you, both of you.
Oh, wow. I see all of you, and I see more people behind you. I see more people over there, and more people over there. So exciting to see so many people who love fighting games all in one spot. It's why we love coming to EVO every year, and it's what we're trying to achieve. So thank you all for coming, and I hope you've had a great time.
Yeah, one of the things that's very special for me about fighting games is coming to these events and seeing the same people. You know, maybe you only see them once a year, but people I saw 15 years ago or 10 years ago are still coming, and you see them and it's like a family reunion. So I'm so happy to see all of you. Like, they've been a big part of my life, and I'm hoping to see many of you in Las Vegas this year as well.
というわけでありがとうございました。
ありがとうございました
Thank you very much
Thank you very
for the
much.
Cannon Brothers。亀子さんもどうもありがとうございまし
ありがとうございま
た。それではこの後もエボジャパン2023目いっぱい楽しんでください。どうもありがとうございました。
ありがとうございました。